Welcome to the Belated Tech Channel's 51st edition of our Milestones series in space exploration, science, and technology. In this video, we will not be revealing historical milestones of the week, but instead looking back at all of 2020. This is our second year producing content, and we would like to thank our viewers for choosing our content among the many fine quality choices that are available. The year 2020 will be indelibly linked to the COVID-19 novel coronavirus pandemic, the hundreds of thousands of resulting deaths, and subsequent global economic collapse. This year also happened to be the final year of President Trump's term of office, which was accompanied by an outsized helping of political theater. The year was also notable for the ongoing civil wars in Syria, Yemen, Ukraine, and Libya, and the collapse of democratic rule in Hong Kong, protests over law enforcement in the United States, and the normalization of relations between Israel and 3 Islamic countries. After Super Bowl 54, in which the Kansas City Chiefs defeated the San Francisco 49ers, the sports world came to a virtual halt along with the real world, but operations in most leagues resumed after a few months' hiatus. The Los Angeles Dodgers won the World Series by defeating the Tampa Bay Rays. It was the Dodgers' first World Series win since 1988. The Tampa Bay Lightning captured the Stanley Cup by defeating the Dallas Stars. And Bayern Munich defeated Paris Saint-Germain to win the 2019-2020 UEFA Champions Soccer League title. Of course, this isn't the health, politics, and sports channel. It is the Belated Tech channel. So let's dig into the top 2020 events in tech. We'll be providing a link to each video where we cover the event during the year. January 19th. The Crew Dragon in-flight abort test was conducted on this date from the Kennedy Space Center's Launch Complex 39A. The abort test was an atmospheric test of the Dragon 2 abort system after max Q, which is the point at which the spacecraft experiences the maximum atmospheric pressure on the hull. Upon abort, the capsule, C-205, fired its Super Draco engines, reached an apogee of 25 miles, deployed parachutes after re-entry, and splashed down the ocean 19 miles downrange from the launch site. The test was previously slated to be accomplished with the Crew Dragon Demo 1 capsule, C-204, but that craft exploded during the ground test of Super Draco engines on April 20th of 2019. C-205 was originally intended for the crewed flight. As expected, the booster, 1049, was destroyed by aerodynamic forces after the capsule aborted. This Falcon 9 rocket did not have a functional second stage, as only the booster was needed for the abort test. January 29th. We released the history of the Coca-Cola formula in episode 21 on this date. Coke, the world's most popular soft drink, is also the only product that has a non-narcotic use for the coca plant. The coca plant is also used by indigenous peoples, by pharmaceutical companies, and by criminals, all for its narcotic properties. Although the Coca-Cola company makes a lot of hay over its secret cola formula, in fact, that formula has actually changed multiple times over the 100 years or so of its existence. Its popularity is due more to its unique formulation of carbonization, acidity, and sweetness, a formulation that differs significantly from its competitors. February 19th. We released our analysis of how many 2170 and 18650 batteries Tesla actually produced through 2019 on this date. The number of finger-sized batteries the company had to manufacture for 365,000 vehicles it had made between 2008 and 2019 was quite eye-popping. The video also reviewed how the composition of the 18650 and 2170 batteries had changed over the years, and how it was the battery that was the main constraining factor on how many vehicles Tesla could actually produce. Not the number of workers, not the number of robots, not the fabrication of the chassis and body, not any other factor. March 7th. Booster 1059 conducted the 50th successful landing of a first stage for the company SpaceX on this date. The stage had just launched the Dragon freighter C-112 and the CRS-20 mission to the ISS from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station's Launch Complex 40. It is a record that is likely to remain unbroken for quite some time. Blue Origin's rockets have been designed with self-landing boosters, and Rocket Lab has indicated it will begin doing so in 2021. The remaining rocket manufacturers have shown little interest in following SpaceX's example, as their business models rely on one-time use to maximize revenue. Freighter C-112 was to be the last flight of a Dragon 1 cargo capsule, as NASA had approved SpaceX's request to use a freighter variant of the Dragon 2 crew capsule for cargo moving forward. March 10th, we congratulated Tesla on delivering its 1 millionth vehicle on this date. Just 10 years before, the wager on the street was that the electric car company wouldn't deliver its 1,000th vehicle, never mind its 1 millionth. But the introduction of the Model 3 and then the Model Y vehicles changed all of that, pushing production from tens of thousands of vehicles per quarter to hundreds of thousands per quarter. We had a little fun with the numbers in this video, updating our battery computation to show how many batteries Tesla had to manufacture in order to deliver 1 million cars. March 29th, we reported on this date that OneWeb filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. OneWeb is a low Earth orbit satellite broadband internet provider in the nascent constellation deployment stage. It manufactures its own satellites and contracts with Arianespace to launch them on Russian rockets. The company had run out of cash and was unable to raise more funds during the market panic caused by the pandemic. SpaceX had launched its fifth set of 60 satellites into orbit for its competing Starlink constellation on March 18th. It was becoming obvious to investors that Musk's company was going to beat OneWeb to operational start, and that SpaceX, assuming it could solve the myriad number of technical problems with satellite down and uplinks and the ground terminals, was going to be the superior solution. The Chapter 11 filing was not to be OneWeb's dying gasp. India's Bharti Enterprises and UK government purchased the company out of bankruptcy in July. The company had managed to launch 68 satellites on February 6th and March 21st, and with funding obtained by the new owners, the company resumed launches on December 18th with another 36 satellites. April 14th, we reported on this date the U.S. Space Force award to Vox Space for 3 launches for $35 million. Vox Space is the federal contracting subsidiary of Virgin Orbit, the British-American company that is working on air-launched rockets. The rocket, Launcher 1, has yet to reach orbit as of the end of 2020. The demo flight was aborted due to an engine malfunction in May, and the expected Demo 2 flight that was to occur on December 19th did not occur and was pushed to the middle of January 2021. COVID-19 was blamed for the delay. April 18th, we released on this date a look back at the Buick Riata, one of GM's last exotic sports cars outside of the Corvette. Cheap exotic cars have become a staple on YouTube, so we thought we would offer our contribution. Comments have been a mix of sneering and approval, depending on whether the commenter actually owned one, but we stand by our selection. April 22nd, SpaceX launched its 6th Starlink cluster to orbit on a Falcon 9 B5 rocket, Booster 1051, from the Kennedy Space Center's Launch Complex 39A on this date. The flight was notable for the Falcon 9 surpassing the Atlas V as the most flown operational U.S. rocket. The rocket also featured an increase in used components. The booster was on its 4th mission, while the payload fairings had been previously used on the Amos 17 mission in August of 2019. April 26th, we reported on this date the breakup of the merger between Boeing and Embraer. The hookup was supposed to be the counterbalance to Airbus's purchase of Bombardier's commercial jetliner business. What changed? The 737 MAX and the pandemic. The 737 MAX disaster grounded the entire fleet, halted production, and resulted in the firing of the CEO. Already under financial duress from this episode, the pandemic effectively ended the airplane manufacturing industry for a time, as air travel came to a virtual halt. May 5th, we reported on this date the launch of the CHEOPS space telescope by the European Space Agency. Its mission is to determine the size of known extrasolar planets, which will allow the estimation of their mass, density, composition, and their formation. The small satellite features an optical Ritchie-Chrétien telescope with an aperture of 12 inches, mounted on a standard small satellite platform. It was placed into sun-synchronous orbit of about 435 miles in altitude. May 6th, the U.S. Space Force released its first recruiting commercial near this date. The nascent 6th branch of the U.S. military is subordinated to the U.S. Air Force, much like the Marine Corps is to the Navy. Its early mission is to assume responsibility for military satellite communications and tracking. May 8th, we released on this date our look back of the VPOAD pocket mechanical adding machine. The little device, which was invented in a similar form during the 1800s, became ubiquitous in the early 20th century before the invention of the electronic calculator in the 1960s. May 17th, the United Launch Alliance launched the X-37B spaceplane for the U.S. Space Force on an Atlas V rocket from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station's Launch Complex 41 on this date. The previous X-37B launch was performed by SpaceX. The X-37B is an unmanned and downsized version of the space shuttle that the Air Force uses as a technology demonstrator, at least according to its unclassified briefings. Mission durations are typically longer than a year. The Air Force Academy's Falcon-Sat 8 was released after the X-37B reached low Earth orbit. May 18th, on the eve of the U.S. return to manned spaceflight after a 9-year hiatus, we took a look back at the U.S. Air Force's and NASA's attempts to place a permanent space station in Earth orbit, why it never happened, and whether or not it is still needed. May 26th, what was supposed to be Virgin Orbit's triumphal inaugural flight of the Launcher 1 rocket ended in failure only seconds after being released from the 747 carrier. It is a setback that the company has yet to recover from. Whereas SpaceX is capable of launching new Starship prototypes only weeks after crash landings or static explosions in the test stand, it seems that Virgin Orbit lacks the financial resources necessary to achieve the same feat. As aforementioned, the Launcher 1 Demo 2 flight is now expected in January of 2021. May 30th, SpaceX launched the manned Demo 2 Dragon capsule, C206, to the ISS on a Falcon 9 B5 rocket, booster 1058, from the Kennedy Space Center's Launch Complex 39A on this date. It was the first manned U.S. spaceflight since the STS-135 mission by the shuttle Atlantis in 2011. It was a seminal moment for NASA, which finally returned to manned space exploration after the end of the 1960s-era space transportation system, a triumph for the commercial company SpaceX over Boeing's federal business, and a validation of the approach the Obama and Trump administrations took to replace the retired shuttle fleet. June 8th, the Space Force released its second recruiting commercial near this date. The Space Force had officially launched in 2019, but it wasn't until 2020 that the command structure had filled out far enough to allow for effort to be applied to recruiting and training. It will be years before the Space Force will be able to manage programs without the Air Force's help, and years before the new service branch will be filling most of its ranks from new recruits, other than transfers. June 12th, we reported on electric and hydrogen fuel truck manufacturer Nikola's $34 billion valuation on this date. The company, which was less than 5 years old, went public by merging with a SPAC and quickly reached its stratospheric valuation. This despite having no factory, built no production vehicles, and the founding CEO being forced out just before going public. June 15th. On this date, we released the first installment of our new Tech History anthology, This Week in Space and Tech History. Number 1 was for the week of June 15th through June 21st. In this series, we look back at the important tech and space milestones that occurred on that particular date in the year. In 2020, we covered milestones that happened over 6 centuries, from 1500 to present day. June 27th, we released our look back at the origins of the French space exploration program on this date. The video, episode 35, examines the contributions of Robert Esnault-Pelterie and Jean-Jacques Barry in the 1920s to the 1950s. July 19th. So what are the differences between the SpaceX Dragon 2 crew capsule and the space shuttle? On this date in episode 37, we released our analysis of the similarities and disparities between the two and examined the roles that space planes and space capsules fulfill and manned space exploration. July 20th. SpaceX successfully caught both fairing halves in the nets of its ocean-going recovery ships for the first time in this date. The fairings were part of the Falcon 9 mission to deliver the South Korean Anasis 2 communication satellite. July 29th. Virgin Galactic revealed on this date the interior cabin design of its future manned spaceplanes. The company intends on conducting a space tourism business featuring flights to near space, or about 60 miles above Earth. The Spaceship Two craft has made multiple successful flights to space, and the company is currently undergoing the rigorous process to build and certify space frames. July 30th. The Mars Perseverance lander was lifted towards Mars on an Atlas V rocket from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station's Launch Complex 41 on this date. The lander sports a number of mission firsts: a first in the number and resolution of cameras, a first in sample collection, and a first in possessing an onboard aerial drone. It was the third Mars mission in July to take advantage of the once every 26-month window, and perhaps may be the most ambitious. August 4th, SpaceX conducted a 500-foot hop of its serial number 5 Starship prototype on this date at the Boca Chica engineering facility. It was the first launch of the full-size Starship and the fourth launch of a prototype, the previous 3 excursions being performed with the Starhopper abbreviated test article. Serial number 5 featured a single Raptor engine, which easily lifted the rocket, essentially the second stage for the full configuration that will include the Super Heavy first stage and the actual pressurized spacecraft. The actual Starship is expected to have 6 Raptor engines, and the Super Heavy booster 30 such engines. A Falcon 9 Heavy, for comparison, is outfitted with 27 Merlin engines. August 11th. What if you were told that Yuri Gagarin in 1961 was not the first to board a rocket intended to reach Earth orbit that lit its engines? What if such an attempt was made more than 30 years earlier? Don't believe it? Check out our coverage of this event in Rocket to Venus, episode 39, which was released on this date. At the same time that physicist Robert Goddard was experimenting with unmanned rockets during the 1920s, an engineer and 2 craftsmen built and tested the world's first manned liquid-fueled rocket in Baltimore, Maryland. Goddard went on to be recognized as the father of the U.S. space program, while the 3 from Baltimore disappeared into the past. In an attempt to understand why, we examined what facts and rumor that are available. We also covered the very recent resurgence in interest in the media for this story. August 15th, we released our coverage of NASA's issuance of 10 years of video from the Solar Dynamics Observatory on this date. The SDO, NASA's Geosynchronous Multi-Camera Telescope satellite, has taken more than a decade's worth of pictures, video, and scientific observations of the Sun. It is undoubtedly the most comprehensive set of solar observations ever made, and has yielded a treasure trove of scientific data. We condensed the 61-minute video released by NASA of those 10 years into 10 minutes, interspersed with commentary and notes of key political changes at the agency. September 3rd, SpaceX conducted a 500-foot hop of its serial number 6 Starship prototype on this date at the Boca Chica engineering facility. It was the second launch of the full-size Starship and the 5th launch of a prototype. Like the test with serial number 5, serial number 6 featured a single Raptor engine. The point of the test was to implement corrections made to the engine and the hull based on data collected from the serial number 5 launch, and to collect yet more telemetry. Serial number 7 was to be destructively tested on a fixed stand, which meant that the serial number 6 launch was to be the last until serial number 8 was launched 3 months later. September 7th, General Motors agreed to build Nikola's Badger pickup truck in exchange for a 10% stake on this date. Nikola capitalized on the interest in its semi-trucks and indirectly the interest in the Tesla Cybertruck to launch the Badger concept and accept pre-orders in April. That left the problem of actually building the truck, as Nikola was only building a manufacturing plant for its semi-truck. The solution to this problem was GM, who could dedicate the necessary resources. This arrangement was to fall apart in November when GM backed out of the deal and signed a revised joint marketing agreement that did not include the Badger production. Nikola quietly canceled Badger production afterwards, leaving the project in limbo. September 8th. On this date, we released the first installment of our new SpaceX and Tesla history anthology, the Tesla and SpaceX Redux. Number 1 was for the week of September 7th to September 13th. In this series, we'll look back at the important milestones that occurred on that particular date in the year for Elon Musk's various business ventures. In 2020, we covered milestones that happened between 1999 to present day. September 11th. On this date, we launched the Belated Tech Gaming channel, our second YouTube channel after the main Belated Tech Musings channel. We originally anticipated releasing gameplay walkthroughs on the main channel, and in fact had uploaded 12 episodes of a Death Stranding walkthrough. With the new channel, viewers can easily find videos without having to sort through our tech content. September 20th. Tesla's much ballyhooed Battery Day presentation occurred on this date. The three main reveals in the presentation was the introduction of the new and larger 4680 battery, the changing of Tesla's battery chemistry to fully eliminate cobalt as a necessary ingredient, and the introduction of the tri-motor Model S Plaid. October 13th. Apple released its official iPhone 12 reveal on this date. The company confirmed that its iPhone 12 would operate with 5G technology rather than the 4G communication tech used by the iPhone 11 and several previous generations. The new phone featured a 6.1-inch regular screen size and a 5.4-inch screen size labeled as the Mini. The display of the iPhone 12 is all new, using OLED rather than LCD, and is protected by a new ceramic shield that gives the display 4 times the drop performance against cracking. Also revealed was the Pro Super Premium version with a 6.7-inch screen that featured 3 cameras and a LiDAR depth sensor, giving the phone unparalleled low light performance. October 17th. We finally resumed our Tech Lookback series with the release of episode 40 on Franklin Computer and the Spelling Ace on this date. Franklin Electronic Publishers' legacy as the first successful Apple clone maker is long forgotten. Most know Franklin for its electronic handheld devices, including dictionaries and language translators, and almost no one is aware that Franklin is largely out of business, having not released a new product in 5 years. We take a look at one of its last products, which still sells briskly in the marketplace. October 24th. SpaceX launched its 14th Starlink cluster to orbit on a Falcon 9 B5 rocket, Booster 1060, from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station's Launch Complex 40 on this date. The flight was notable for being the 100th successful orbital launch in the company's history. October 25th. Our Tech Lookback series continues with episode 41, which was released on this date. For this video, we examined the rise and fall of the Polaroid Corporation and its eventual resurrection as a Dutch company in the 21st century. As part of our review, we get our hands on a Polaroid 600 One Step Plus and provide a rundown of the product. October 28th. SpaceX launched its beta Starlink broadband internet service on this date. Available in the northern US and Canada, the service costs $99 a month, plus a $499 network kit that included the ground station. Of particular note was the company's caveat that service was not guaranteed and could be offline for stretches at a time. Data speeds were expected to be 50 to 150 megabits per second. No word on how many signed up for the service. November 5th. Our Tech Lookback series continued with episode 42, which was released on this date. For this video, we examined Texas Instruments' inexpensive handheld electronic calculators of the 1970s, with particular emphasis on the TI 1025. November 15th, SpaceX launched the manned Crew 1 Dragon capsule, C207. to the ISS on a Falcon 9 B-5 rocket, Booster 1061, from the Kennedy Space Center's Launch Complex 39A on this date. It was the first manned operational U.S. spaceflight following the demonstration flight conducted on May 30th. The mission featured the first crew rotation of the Commercial Crew program, following the return in August of Crew Demo 2. 3 astronauts were sent for a 6-month stay aboard the ISS, during which the Boeing Starliner OFT-2 flight is expected to dock. The Crew 1 flight was originally scheduled for 2017, but 3 years of delays resulting from development challenges and the destruction of the Demo 1 capsule during an engine test. November 23rd, China launched the Chang'e 5 lunar orbiter and lander on the Long March 5 rocket from the Yiquan Launch Center on this date. The launch was notable in that it was the first scientific mission to the moon with the intent to return lunar samples since Apollo and a comparable Soviet mission during the 1970s. The launch was also noteworthy for its scientific purpose among a plethora of 2020 Chinese launches dedicated to the introduction of several dozen spy satellites. The mission was a success. The orbiter inserted itself around the moon, and the lander alighted on the surface and gathered samples. The sample module lifted back off the moon and rendezvoused with the orbiter, which returned to Earth in December. December 9th, SpaceX conducted a suborbital 41,000-foot launch of its serial number 8 Starship prototype on this date at the Boca Chica Engineering Facility. It was the first launch of the full-size Starship and the 6th launch of a prototype. Serial number 8 featured a nose cone, fins, and several heat shield test tiles, bringing the prototype's form factor even closer to the final version. Unlike serial number 6, serial number 8 featured 3 single Raptor engines. Serial number 8 successfully launched to its target elevation, shut down its engines, performed an aerodynamic return glide, refired its engines, and landed on the target platform. The only blemish during the test was the overly hard landing, which caused the prototype to crumple and explode, destroying the craft utterly. Serial number 9 is already under construction. December 14th, the United States and Canada began mass vaccination for the COVID-19 virus using Pfizer's vaccine tocilizumab. The UK have begun mass vaccinations on December 8th. Russia began mass vaccinations on December 5th with GAM's Sputnik V vaccine. The beginning of mass inoculations likely means that the current chapter of the pandemic is coming to an end. Thanks again for your viewing patronage during 2020, and we look forward to producing more content in 2021. If you enjoyed this overview of space, science, and tech on our channel during 2020, click that like button. Did you agree with our choices, or were there other events that were better? Go ahead and share with us by dropping a comment below. Take a moment to subscribe if you have not yet done so. The first major YouTube milestone is at 10,000 subscribers, and we are doing everything we can to get that at mark. Help us out by becoming a subscriber so we can continue to deliver great content to you. And please click the bell notification icon to ensure you are notified when new episodes are released. Links to some of our most recent episodes can be found in the description section below. You can peruse our entire 180 plus video library by looking at our playlists, which conveniently sort videos by subject. We announce all new videos on our Twitter and Parler accounts, as well as in the community feed for this channel. Want to know how to navigate our channel content? We refer to retrotech and innovation documentary segments as episodes. Coverage of current events in space exploration, science, and technology are labeled as shorts. Space and tech history are documented in an anthology called Milestones. And gameplay recordings can be discovered on the Bladed Tech Gaming channel in videos called walkthroughs and side missions. Stay connected by occasionally checking our Instagram feed, where we post content from our upcoming episodes and from episodes past that you may have missed. And finally, join us on our Facebook page, where we cover current news and events related to channel content. Thanks for watching.